So something else I thought we could talk about is midlife friendships, right? This is really top of mind for me this morning because I got this lovely text message to start my day. A friend said, thank you so much for sending me a signed copy of your book. And as it turned out, she was the friend that I'd mentioned in the friendship chapter about her having been the friend when I was 4 years of age. And I mentioned her in the acknowledgements. And she just felt so seen and supported that, you value our friendship that much. It's like, yes, because I think there have been gaps over the years where we lost touch for a while and then we got back in touch. And I guess I'm rambling a little bit, but I'm thinking about how there's such high expectations of friendship. And sometimes we think you have to like measure up to this impossibly high standard. And I think let's just cut to the chase and talk about sort of like why it matters. So on the one hand, we know that when you reach midlife, your friends are so important to you. Like the people that you're just meeting now and feeling like fascinated by this person, as well as the person that you have like hilarious stories going back decades that you can draw upon and reflect upon. I think that the great thing about having some of those long-term friendships is that somebody who's known you forever and can remind you. So if you think on a day where you say something like, I have no patience, it's like, oh yeah, well, remember this time when you showed incredible superhuman patience. They have like the big picture of you, right? But the other thing I heard so much when I was interviewing women about sort of like friendships in their lives was how they felt so frustrated that their friendships were getting squeezed out. A lot of these people were in like peak sandwich generation mode with layers and layers of care and work responsibilities. And they just found that if something got scratched off the list at the end of the day, too often it was a friendship. One of the women I interviewed for my book told me how she was tired of like constantly rebooking the same lunch because somebody would always have to reschedule. And sometimes she would just give up because she felt like she was pressuring the other person. So I think that friendships matter a lot and they aren't always easy to fit into a life. And some women feel really lonely and isolated as a result, and often feel like, I guess I'm just not friend worthy. People didn't really like me after all, but maybe it's just a busy chapter of life.
Well, that's for sure. It is a very busy chapter of life. And I think a lot of those friendships do start coming back online when things start to get a little bit less busy. Like if you have kids and the kids are getting older, then it can be a little easier to find that time to book the lunch, stuff like that. But I do agree that it can be a very lonely time for women. And I do hear about that quite a bit. And part of what I think is behind that also is that what I see, and I'm not sure how much this came up for you, but there is a real longing in midlife for connection and meaning. And some of these friendships can feel very surface. And so they're exhausting and depleting for people who really just want to have a real conversation, or really want to share the intimate details or the struggles, or just have someone on their side. So I think if you've had someone with you since high school, those relationships work well if you're both willing to let each other evolve out of the person you were in grade 10 and, become the person that you're going to be in midlife and support each other. And you can still remind each other and have the funny stories, but there's something so powerful about being with someone in all their forms and supporting them and loving them in all their forms and letting them change. And I think those are the ones that last. And sometimes the ones that don't are the ones where you get stuck in someone's eyes in the way you were. And that can be really, that can feel like you're not being seen. The way you said, your friend felt so seen. You can feel like you're not being seen. And that's a very lonely feeling. So my other thought about friendships in midlife is I feel like social media can make us feel like you need I don't know, like a squad. Is that what they call them? Like squad goals, or like a group of women to go on your 50th birthday trip with, or a bestie and if you don't have that kind of picture perfect friendship group or picture perfect best friend, that you're lacking in some way, like in what you're saying, that you're not worthy of it, or that, so it becomes a should. And I think we can feel really sad if we don't have that. But so often I think what we're seeing on social media doesn't show the true story anyway. So it's a bit of a compare and despair kind of situation, I think. Yeah. And then, the last thing that I was going to say is that if you do have someone close, I think that can be so, so helpful to get through the transitions of midlife. Someone that you can be honest with and talk about the hot flushes or the, the frustrations or the growth or the what you're excited about. I think those can be incredibly supportive relationships in midlife. So if you do have it, or you have someone that you could nurture it with, it's worth nurturing those friendships as much, even if it's just sending it a text and saying, hey, I saw this, I thought of you. So that's what I'm
I have a
thinking of.
friend who's been my friend for a long time, and she's super wise. And for a long time, we were having sort of like, monthly Zoom visits and stuff. And then, she had a lot of challenges. I started to feel a little bit exhausted and burnt out. And we love each other enough that we can say, you know what? That's probably not the best way of connecting right now. So she said, why don't we go old school and start writing one another letters via snail mail? It's like, wow, that's magical. Because then you get like, I literally ripped open the envelope and sat in the chair and read through like pages and pages of this person just taking time to connect with me one-on-one. So of course I'm going to be writing her back. And I'm so excited. I actually sent her an email to say, I got your letter. I'm not saying anything more because I want to write back in a way that honors your letter. So I guess my message here is just that, sometimes what works in a friendship in one moment doesn't work when you're in a different space or whatever, and not to feel rejected if the other person has to say, this would work better for me, or to set boundaries around, what's possible. Maybe you had this annual ritual that is feeling more oppressive than joyful for somebody. So if we're learning and growing by ourselves, how could we not also be learning and growing in our friendships?